But first, could traveling while black be a problem for you at Atlanta's airport? The shockingly similar stories of 3 different men who say they were racially profiled before boarding a flight. Welcome to the Grio. I'm Ebony K. Williams. An award-winning TV and film director who happens to be a black man says he was racially profiled at Atlanta's airport. Tabari Sturdivant says that he was approached by DEA agents while he was waiting to board a Delta flight to LA almost 2 weeks ago. Now, his story is disturbingly similar to 2 comedians who also said they were racially profiled by local police, them in separate instances, while at the same airport, while also heading from Atlanta to LA, also on Delta flights. Now, those 2 men have filed a lawsuit. Here's what they said earlier this month during a press conference.
I was almost on the plane when, in the jet bridge, 2 officers popped out, showed their badges, and started asking questions whether I had illegal drugs like cocaine and meth. I felt cornered in that jet bridge, and I felt the need to comply.
I was the only person of color on the jet bridge at the time, all white people in front of me and behind me. They singled me out. They asked me if I was selling drugs, transporting drugs, what kind of drugs I have on me, and it was clearly racial profiling.
Now, a fellow passenger who witnessed Tabari's incident with the DEA recorded this footage of the search. And here's what he told a reporter with Atlanta News First.
That didn't make sense for the time and place, and then for have it to be, an African American with everything that's gone on in this country recently, like that just didn't make sense. I know that probably would never happen to me.
And we have reached out to the DEA about Tabari's incident, but we've not heard back. And we also contacted local officials at Atlanta's airport who just referred us back to the DEA. And we reached out to Delta Airline, who declined to comment, saying that the airline plays no role in what law enforcement does at the airport. I want to bring in Tabari Sturdivant to hear his side of the story. Tabari, thank you so much for joining us. So really sorry that this even happened to you. Tabari, just tell us what went down. How did this all come about?
I want to thank you for having me. So I was working on a film. I was working on a film that was in LA, and everything was booked. So I was very eager to get to the airport. I had got to the airport like an hour and a half earlier that day. And, it was the busiest I ever seen Atlanta airport. So as soon as I walked, yeah. And I travel a lot. So this was like, as soon as I walked through the front doors, it was like a line. They started the line. They wrapped it all the way around. Either you were going to clear, TSA check, and it was just kind of crazy. So I knew I was going to miss my flight there. So I was very just anxious, and I knew, I was directing and I had people waiting for me. We were supposed to be doing, equipment and production calls and everything. So I immediately go to the ticket desk at Delta. They put me on the next flight, which was 10 a.m. They told me I was flying standby at that time, but since there was so much traffic and congestion in the airport, those people were probably going to miss the flight, and they're probably going to be rolling over flights all day. So I went and got something to eat. I'm by myself. I'm traveling by myself. So I had my Trayvon black hoodie on, and I had my headphones on, and I went and got something to eat. I'm listening to UGK, and I'm just waiting for my name to be called off of the board. I'm just standing there, and then this tall white man, he was about, 6'1". He was towering over me. He came and he asked me for my ID. I was confused at first because I thought it was somebody that was working for Delta, and they were going to give me my boarding pass or something. He had been watching or knew what it was.
So you were at the gate at this point, Tabari?
I'm at the gate. People are loading on the plane. The plane is loading. This is not even time to play. It's minutes before the doors are going to get closed. It's just like that. We're just basically waiting for the most of the passengers were on. Most of the people around me were flying standby or something like that. So, this guy approaches me, asks me for my ID, and I immediately comply because I'm trying to get on my flight. I'm like, okay. And then another black guy comes behind me, and they kind of box me in, and they're like, we have to ask you some questions. And I was like, about what? That's when I was I felt like I was being attacked at that time. I felt like, I was like I was cornered in. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, what had happened. So when I'm like asking them, what's going on, by then he's putting his my ID in some little machine, or he's typing information about my ID. Then the black guy he starts asking me questions about, do I have any drugs in my bag? Do I have any money in my bag? Do I smoke? Am I high? Like, I'm like, what is this about? And, so I start, I was like, I gotta make my flight. Like, y'all, and one, I kept saying, you are embarrassing me. I kept saying, you're embarrassing me. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this in front of these people? And that's kind of why they moved me over to the desk. They were like, if we move over here, and let us do your job, you wouldn't be embarrassed. And I'm like, by then I could see people pulling out their cell phones and, they're recording, and it's just like, maybe like 20 people around just like looking at me. And I'm so embarrassed. I'm like mortified at this point. I know my constitutional rights. I could have stayed toe to toe with those guys and missed my flight and missed another flight and missed a big job and hundreds of thousands of dollars in LA, had been messed up because, I'm sitting here arguing with some DEA agents that's racial profiling me, And so, so I was like, man, do what you got to do. As I'm saying that, like, I'm thinking he's just checking and going to ask me questions. The guy is just all in my bag. The black guy is just all in my bag. What you can see, that's the footage that you see. And he's just pulling out everything. He's pulling out hard
searching.
drive.
So, Tabari, at this point, this black DEA agent is in your bag, and he's processing a search. I want to stop you there because legally, this is very important. This is an important point of distinction now that we're at a search. Tabari, we got to hear all these details, so I want you to stay with us. Coming up, I want to hear what the next steps are going to look like for you after the break. Has Atlanta's airport become a place where you'll be targeted while traveling as black? 3 men have recently shared what they're calling racial profiling after they were stopped by law enforcement, some of them searched in separate instances, all while traveling from Atlanta to Los Angeles. Now, 2 of those men are comedians, and they say it was local police who searched them, and they filed a lawsuit. This most recent case happened just a couple of weeks ago, and it involves Tabari Sturdivant. He is an award-winning filmmaker and director. He was then searched by DEA agents. Before the break, Tabari was sharing how traumatic and upsetting this entire event was for him. Again, we have reached out to the DEA agents about Tabari's incident, but we have not heard back. We've also contacted Atlanta local airport officials who referred us back to the DEA. And we reached out to Delta, who declined to comment, saying that the airline has no role in what law enforcement does at an airport. All right, Tabari, back to this very important part where now you say they are searching, going through your personal belongings, saying that they're looking for drugs. And when nothing comes up, it's almost as if they seem disappointed.
Yes, they almost it was the black guy is on the floor, and he's like, and he looks at the white guy, and he's like, man, he doesn't have anything. And I was like, yo, what is that? And he gets up and he's like, I'm going to help you get on your flight. Like, now he's good cop, and he's giving me that whole game, and so, but he told me I was like, man, and I was just giving him the business. I was like, man, that was some effed up you just did to me, and I tell him that. He was like, listen, I've been racially profiled before. And he tells me a story about, getting pulled over in his car and giving the police the credentials. They wouldn't even believe that it was his credentials. He had to go to court and everything like that. So that was like another 3 minutes of us standing outside. Then, the other cop is just standing like ice grilling everybody and ice grilling me as I'm getting on the plane. We get on the plane, and it's like, as soon as I get on, like, a couple of white ladies came over, and they were like, oh my God, that was disgusting. That was disgusting. And, and I was just like, got my phone. Now I realize, all right, people have seen this or whatever. Then I get off the board. A couple of other white ladies come up to me and say basically the same thing. All right. Mm-hmm. I'm on the elevator, and I'm talking to my girlfriend on my headphones, and we're on the elevator, and a white guy, his name is Kevin Frank. He was like, man, I wanted to talk to you about that. I filmed it. Wow. I filmed it. And I was like, oh my God, he filmed it. So we get off the elevator, and he's like going through it. I felt some type of way somehow, because when he's showing me, he had already posted on social media. And I'm like, man, this is on social media now. You know what I'm saying? So he was nice enough to get my information. We exchanged information. He emailed me the file, and then, the balls got rolling like that.
Tabari, have you sought legal counsel?
What I'm doing is this, like, I've had people already reach out to me, and also some very heavy hitters, and I just want to do everything right. I don't want to, I'm still in this kind of by myself. So I haven't set legal counsel yet, but I will be in the near future.
I encourage you to, and I'm going to tell you why. I used to practice criminal defense work myself, and so I'm, an expert.
You could be my lawyer. What's going on?
No, I got a day job right now, Tabari. But I will offer you this, and speak to your heavy hitters when you talk to them. You and all of us have what's called a Fourth Amendment constitutional right against illegal searches and seizures. Yeah. That's the law in that. So what that means is, in order for any law enforcement, any government official that's why I stopped you when you got to the search part. It's the detainment, which was the engaging of you, asking for your ID and all that. That's one thing. That's called detainment. And then you get to assess whether or not you felt free to leave. And in your case, it sounds like you didn't. But once they start proceeding with a search, they have to have some level of probable cause to engage with that. And so I would be very...
How about this? How about asked me? That we didn't even have a conversation about my bag before you're in my bag. So, like, when we're talking about all of that, like, ask me, can I go in the bag? Can I check the bag? We have not a conversation about the bag, period.
Right. And that's important. You know why? You know why that's important? Because had he asked you and had you said, as many people do, not knowing any better, sure, officer, like you said, I'm trying to make my flight, but that's called a consent. And once we consent to those searches, that can compromise legal efforts there too. So I'm very interested. I'm going to end on this, and I want your thoughts on it before we go, Tabari. One thing that you can't do is racially profile. Now, that's separate and apart for something called criminal profiling, right? That's where law enforcement is engaging with certain potential suspects because they fit an actual profile that they have been legitimately reported around certain specific characteristics, height, articles of clothing, things of this nature.
Yesterday, I have an 11-year-old daughter. It was on the news when I was walking out the door, so I felt uncomfortable with not giving her a heads up about what was going on. Yeah. So she didn't get to school, and it didn't know, and then somebody hit that. So that's another layer of the BS that they have. Not only have they traumatized me, now it's like trickling down to my daughter.
Tabari, that is the vicarious trauma that we are talking about. And we're so sorry for your daughter and for you to have to experience this. But we want to thank you, Tabari, for sharing your story.
Thank you.